Hello, my name is Talip Küçükcan. I welcome you to the TRT World Forum Digital Debates. Today we are going to look at the long and short-term impact of COVID-19 on education. COVID-19 has disrupted our lives. It has impacted many areas, starting from health, transportation, and of course, economy. And one important area that has been influenced and impacted by COVID-19 is, of course, education. These days, schools are opening, and some countries open the schools. In some countries, they follow a policy that has hybrid education, and in some countries, schools are not opening. Today, we have a well-known and renowned guest, Professor Selçuk Şirin. I will just introduce him to you, then we will start the discussion. Selçuk Şirin is a professor of applied psychology at the New York University. He uses empirical research methods to better understand the needs of children and families, and to arm professionals and policymakers with the knowledge so as to better understand and also address the needs of the most vulnerable, children. His work aimed to enhance the lives of marginalized children using development in the context as a general framework. His studies focus on immigrant children in New York, but not only in New York. It goes beyond that, in Turkey, in Norway as well. He has published many scholarly articles in renowned journals, and also he has acted as advisor in many international and global organizations. Professor Şirin, thank you very much for joining us today. As an expert on education, we welcome you to the TRT World Forum Digital Debates. I just would like to raise the first question in a general format, actually. Now, we tend to have education in a distance form increasingly. But COVID-19 just, I think, unearthed, in a sense, many difficulties and challenges in the education. Can you please tell us what are the main, I think, challenges that COVID-19 has produced in terms of education?
Well, thanks for the invitation and also introduction. COVID-19, I think, sped up the process of questioning the value of education, the structure of it, and the purposes for why we have formal education in the compulsory fashion, especially through the K-12 system. So when we think of education, if we can just separate K-12 from university, we can talk university next, maybe. At the K-12 level, the schools that we are sending our children right now, almost globally, is designed, maybe 200 years ago, starting in Prussia or Germany, and then it moved to England, right around the time when we have the first industrial cities, as well as the United States. So it was designed for the purposes of housing children when the parents are working in the factories, right? And also to make sure that children, when they get to a certain age, they have the skills to work in the factories. If you look at even the architectural design of schools that we send our kids today, it is the same architectural design of 200 years ago, which is very similar to, textile production units, workshops in England and other places. You have the supervisor, that's the teacher. You have the children that are stacked in, by age, which is not a very good indicator. If you pick, any group of 6 or 7 year olds, you know that there is a huge variation in terms of their skills. So all of this to say that schools are outdated. And right now with COVID-19, we are asking certain questions about schools, whether or not, for example, we have to send our kids every day to schools to learn new subjects, or like math, for example. Do we really have to do that? Do we have to follow the same, even the schedule, right? The calendar, academic calendar. If you look at the academic calendar, we have 3 months of summer where kids are home, and you have the cold winter days where we send our kids to schools in the, in early hours of the day. All of this, I think, is going to help us to redefine the next generation of schools. Perhaps in the next few years, we are going to see the evidence of this. Because of COVID-19, we now learn that kids can learn from through using methods like what we are doing right now. They can learn using technologies that are available that wasn't around, forget 200 years, even 20 years ago. But at the same time, we are learning that there are other needs of children that are not currently being met. Specifically talking about emotional and social needs. So if you think of child development, right? When we think of child development, we are focusing on 3 specific domains. Those are cognitive development, emotional and social development, and physical development. So schools, the way they are designed, it's only focusing on one of those 3 domains, cognitive development, right? We want to make sure that they come, they learn, and then we test them whether they learn, and we pass them, give them diplomas. Right now, I think we are discovering that their social and emotional needs are not secondary to their cognitive needs. So schools will be there in the future, of course, not only for the purposes of cognitive development and kids' needs in that domain, but also for social and emotional development. And that's going to change the definition of schools. It's going to change the design, architecture, calendar, as well as the role of teachers. At the college level, we'll talk that maybe later.
Right. Yeah, of course. We will also come to a question that what we need in the future and what can we do. But before we go on to that question, I just would like to, I think, reiterate what you said. I think there is a huge need for the reform in education, in all areas of education, curriculum, our approach, the methodology, and the architecture. But how well are we prepared to launch such kind of, large-scale reforms, whether we are, mentally, physically, economically, but politically are prepared for that?
We are not. I mean, there is a failure of public sector all over the country, the world, I think. We are seeing that in terms of health, COVID-19 showed, especially in places like United States, right? Where if you don't have the public infrastructure to provide free healthcare to every citizen, then you have a system that fails. We have almost 200,000 people died over the last 6 months, and the numbers are just going up every day. So when you have failed as a government in terms of your priorities, you also fail your citizens. That's in the healthcare sector, but also in education. Right now, United States in particular, we have a very fragmented educational system. It's more localized and it's based on your zip code. So where you live kind of defines what kind of resources there will be for your children. So right now we are not prepared. It's not just the US, Turkey has the same problem. Distance education is putting children from low-income backgrounds at a huge disadvantage. There's always that gap between rich and poor when it comes to educational outcomes. My dissertation is a meta-analysis on the socioeconomic status effect on educational outcomes. So I spend a lot of time showing the effect of social class, socioeconomic status, which is, which is not justifiable. If you are a 6-year-old child, you should not be placed in a bad school just because your parents don't have the money, right? But that is the case. So every day there is distant education, whether it's in Turkey or United States or Europe, wherever. Every day kids are not in school. The gap between those low-income and high-income kids, it just gets bigger. Why?
I think we will touch on this issue as well, because now when we have a different methodology and different technology, the access to these technologies, I think, are different.
So the short answer to your question, we are not ready.
Yeah. We will come to that later on. But now you say, if children do not go to school, this gap will be widened between the poor and the rich, or between those who have or those who haven't. Now you are encouraging children to go to school. But now there is an increasing, I think, rate of coronavirus incidents all around the world. Do you think that going back to school is risky for children or not? I mean, how can you balance this? On the one hand, you just want to see some kind of equality, equal access to the education, but on the other hand, there is a health issue that parents need to address as well.
Well, right now, the decisions in education, for the most part, are made by centralized governments, and one or two people in many different countries make these decisions. That's not the way to solve a complex problem like this, right? We have to bring in a lot of different voices to come up with a creative solution. We can come up with a creative solution. There is a solution. This is not an impossible task. But right now, the setup that we have, both in this country and everywhere else, is really not ready to tackle this issue. We are relying heavily on bureaucrats to make the shots, to make the calls, and in many cases, that's not going to pay attention to all the nuances that are needed to be paid attention in this case. So, and then there's budget priorities, right? We don't have the priority. We don't prioritize children and their needs above and beyond other national interests. This is a global problem, and every country is trying to solve it with their own resources, with their own traditional toolbox. And unfortunately, that's not the way to solve this problem.
Right now, I just would like to share a long quotation from one of your interviews. You stated that the current college education system in the world has become obsolete and it's going to change in the following 10 to 20 years. Universities will not be institutions where 50% of young people feel that they have to attend anymore because not this many people need a university degree. Besides, you argue, universities do not add surplus value to each of their students. Can you please expand on that? Because the education seems to be, at least traditionally, is the key for social mobility and economic mobility. But you argue here that 50% of the children or the young people do not need to go to university. What does it mean?
Well, if you go back to classic definition of university, it wasn't meant to be, job preparation center, right? University, even the name suggests that it was deeper learning, understanding of, the important questions, and also for innovation, research, and development. What happened over the last several decades with the increase of middle class in every different country, including emerging economies like Turkey, we have a large middle class. So essentially, we no longer need the labor of young people. So we have to kind of house them in this institution that's called college or university in different countries. So it's not meant to be 50% or 1 out of 2 18-year-olds going into college, but it has become that way for the reasons that I just explained. If you look at the amount of money that each person puts into university college education, you're going to find that, and there are several calculations based on this in this country and other places, you find that it's very difficult to justify it as a simple economic question. Now, the idea of universities going absolute is actually incorrect. I didn't suggest that. There will always be a university, a role for university. There will be elite universities, research universities. There will be students, maybe 10%, maybe 15%, maybe less, I don't know. But there will be role for higher learning where we have the philosophers, we have the educators, we have the innovators, we have the problem solvers, data mining people, etc. So higher level of expertise will come out of universities. But then you have this third-tier universities all over the place. I think their time is up, and there's a professor at NYU Stern School of Business, Dr. Galloway. He actually has come up with a chart. It shows that of the universities he's investigated, about a third or maybe a quarter of them will go bankrupt in the next few years. And that is the case here. And I think we'll see a similar trend in other countries where you have low quality higher education that are attracting all the students and not really giving them the tools to succeed in the current economy. Now, having said all of this, remember I said earlier that the education system we have is designed about 200 years ago. Now, over the last several decades, especially in the last 20 years or so, we learned so much about human brain, how it develops. We have a whole field called neuroscience. We now have a much better understanding of brain development, which is, one of the core ingredients for learning, right? So if you look at that, you're going to see that if we were to start anew, right? If we just arrive to this earth and we have all the knowledge in the world, we would probably start schools much earlier, not 6, not 7, maybe 2, maybe 3. Now, when I say schools, of course, I'm not talking about the schools that we have right now, but some form of formal learning should occur for age 3 and above, age 3 included, because that's when the brain development has its critical curve. If you reach children that early and provide them quality learning environment, you're going to have a lot of 18-year-olds who no longer need college education because they will be ready to learn on their own through all these resources available. Now, going back to the college level, what's going to happen to all those other young people who are no longer need to go to college in the near future, like I argued? I think what you will see is a new form of credentialing. It's called, some kind of token. So young people will go work with experts, maybe a short period of time. They have internships. They will develop their own projects. They will do a lot of online learning, distant learning, and sometimes immersed learning, but all short-term and more focused. And this will all accumulate on a digital platform, maybe credentialed by blockchain technologies. And at the end, they will each have a digital portfolio. It's kind of similar to what we have in a university diploma right now. So they will use that as an evidence of their credentials, their background, their preparedness, and find jobs or have their professional development progress through those methods.
Professor Şirin, I think you have clearly indicated that the COVID-19 pandemic forced us to rethink the way we educate our children, the way we institutionalize educational establishment, that's for sure. And now we are increasingly using online, I think, education. If you look at the old schools like Harvard, Princeton, Cambridge, Oxford universities, they all go on to the, I think, same kind of methodology. Some of them, I think, do not open this year, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
Do you think, when you look at the long-term impact of COVID-19, do you think we are going to go back to the traditional ways of schooling again, or we are going to remain online? If we are going to remain online to a large extent, not 100%, of course, what are the main challenges for students, for parents, for educators, for professors?
I don't think we are going to have a fully online program for K-12. That's just not going to happen. Kids need other kids. Kids need guidance, and they're going to get it from their peers. They're going to get it from their teachers. So you cannot have fully distal learning. Same applies to colleges. We don't send kids to colleges to learn. We also send them for social networking, right? They build their social capital through colleges, through the friendships that they make, through the mentorship that they receive from professors and others on campus. So it's a way of life in a way that is currently missing from a distant learning environment, the online learning environment. So yes, we will go back, but what we go back will not be the same as what we had from prior to the pandemic.
Then what do you advise to parents where they should invest? They should invest in technology. They should invest in what? Because as you said, there is going to be some kind of mixed, form of education. Then I think they need to see a clear path towards where they should focus their attention and also spend maybe money, etc.
Well, they should invest in early education, like I said, if they have a chance. If they have younger kids, I think this is the best time to invest in early education. Starting age 2, 3, I'm talking about very early. There's tons of research, all came out in the last 20 years or so, from economists to neuroscientists, showing the evidence that this is the time period where we are really not investing enough. And if you invest, you get the highest return. As you may know, Jim Heckman from University of Chicago won Nobel Prize in economics, and one of the main reason why he's known for is the analysis to show that for every dollar you invest in early education, you get back 7 times more, which is the highest rate of return. Now, besides early education, you also have to recognize that schools and teachers are not there just to teach our kids basic skills in math, science, etc. They are also there for our kids to socialize, to have their social and emotional needs met. We need teachers to encourage our kids to learn. Having materials online, all the encyclopedias, books, or other materials online will not automatically make our kids great learners. They need to be motivated. So who's going to motivate them? We need teachers as motivators, as cheerleaders. I think early on I was talking about how the definition of schools will be different. I think the same thing will happen for teachers. Right now, if you're a good math teacher, you're pretty much judged by how well you teach math, right? I can give you an example from my own teaching. I am teaching statistics at NYU and other places for like two decades now. Now, I teach regression or ANOVA or t-test every semester. It doesn't really change that much, but I teach it every year. Now, I don't think I am the best teacher on earth to deliver a lecture on either one of the subjects. There are many good resources online. If you go to YouTube, you will find a lot of good resources. So what we are going to see, current teachers who are really good at teaching the subject material will be huge stars, rock stars on YouTube and other places, distant learning environments. You already have this. If you look at Udemy and other places, you will see there are star teachers. They know how to deliver material through distant learning platforms. So that's one class of teachers in the future. The other class, however, will be about 80, maybe, I'm just making up these numbers as we go right now because we don't have evidence, scientific evidence, yes. But the majority of teachers will be needed to motivate kids to learn. Motivation is key to learning, as you know. In addition to that, they have to teach kids how to learn, how to collect data, how to analyze data, how to present data. All those 21st century skills are going to be experienced in schools. You cannot do it alone. You cannot learn alone. One of the basic skills, as you know, is problem solving in groups, right? You may know the subject well, but do you know how to communicate? Emotional intelligence is going to be key. Empathy, understanding others, expressing yourselves, recognizing your feelings. All of these things will be the new domain of teaching in schools.
Well, thank you for this, very clear, I think, answer. Now, I just would like to come to a point that you have briefly touched, that is access to technology.
Yeah.
When we have online education, of course, you need to have a new technology and you need to finance that. I think, and also you need to have a new, partial curriculum. And also you have said a new type of teachers. I mean, and also we will come to the, parental, I think, responsibility in a while. So what are the new, I think, challenges and problems with regard to technology itself? Because technology, you need to have some sort of, philosophy behind it, the purpose, and also, I think, some finance. And not everybody has it.
No. I mean, I just read today, actually, in Turkey, about 3.5 million children do not have access to internet, and they are right now in distance learning. So, if you come from a family with all the resources available, you're at a huge advantage over others who don't have those. The same thing here in the United States. We have, I read today that Schools need about $235 billion to address all these immediate needs of children having computers and internet services, etc., as well as teachers having all these materials to teach their courses and materials. And they don't have it right now. So technology is there. You know, you have Zoom, you have what we are using right now. I don't know the name of this technology. Technology is available. We have the tools. We just don't have the budgetary priorities to make this technology more democratic. The digital divide was a discussion about 20 years ago, and we stopped talking about it. But just because we stopped talking about it, it doesn't go away. And I think right now we are discovering that if we have addressed this issue, you know, why can't we provide free internet to anybody, any citizen? Every country right now has the resources to make this possible. So it's about choices we make.
Professor Şirin, you have worked for UNESCO, and I think you have already done a lot of work on the vulnerable kids. Now, when you look at the income gap between the North and South, even within those regions, there is a lot of gap between rich and the poor. And of course, if we see education as the main means of social mobility, poor children or those who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, I think they have less chances. And what the world community, international community, or the individual countries can do to bring these people, these children, to the agenda to help them. Otherwise, the COVID-19 will, I think, increase this gap dramatically if we don't address this issue.
Yes, but on the other hand, I would argue that COVID-19 also resets the stage. So all the advantages of the more developed countries like United States, UK, and European countries over, say, third world countries or emerging economies, right? All their advantages in education comes from what? Comes from the buildings that they have, all the schools that they have, all the teachers that they have trained, right? So what happened with COVID-19? This advantage goes away. In a way, it doesn't matter, Harvard has all the buildings, but nobody's there, right? So if you are in one of those other countries that didn't have 200 years of building the infrastructure, kind of the educational wealth, now is the time to start anew. I mean, all the kids in Britain and United States and Turkey are at the same stage to learn all these new skills, like coding, for example, one of the 21st century skills, right? Or distance learning. Right now I am teaching at NYU, and I am a graduate of Middle East Technical University in Turkey. So my colleagues at the METÜ, the college I graduated from, and myself at NYU, we were not on the same playing field, right? We have more resources, I have less teaching load, etc. So it's very difficult for them to compete with us here. We have the privileges of working in one of the best higher education environment in the world. At the same time, in terms of teaching, for example, all of a sudden, I'm using Zoom, they are using Zoom. I am learning how to use Zoom, they are learning how to use Zoom. So in a way, it's resetting the playing field. And if I were in charge of any of emerging economy, right now is the time to prioritize education. I would invest in education, because this is the time, in moments of crisis like this, you can break away from the old order of things and start anew. There are examples of this. Like if you look at the Finland example, right? We talk about the Finn model, how amazing they have built this educational infrastructure. I actually studied this a little bit. I invited the Prime Minister to Turkey, who started a lot of those initiatives. And one of the things he said, in mid-90s, when there was an economic crisis, he cut the budget in all the branches of government except one, education. And he doubled the budget for education during the time of crisis. And then about 10 years after that, you see that Finland was on top of the list for PISA and TIMSS and other places. So it is that kind of decisions, that kind of prioritizing of children over or education over other national interests that's going to put you on top. So I think there is a chance for some other countries to catch up and maybe start something new.
All right, I think this is a new maybe window of opportunity for the emerging economies. But there is also another section of the population and demography, immigrants and refugees. They are not in the same, well, we are all in the same boat, but when you look at the discrimination, when you look at the, unequal treatment, because they are living in camps, they are living in under horrible conditions in many places. What would be your reply? I mean, if I am the devil's advocate in terms of equal opportunities and access to education, what will happen to these already marginalized groups?
Well, two things. Well, I have done a lot of research on this, some of which is an application, actually, an intervention. So two things. One is we have to work with the majority. Majorities, in the United States, majorities are white, middle class, for example. In Turkey, they are, non-refugees. Majority of Turks are of the same race. So we have to work with them to understand that if you care about your own child, you have to care about who your child is going to play with, who they are going to be working with or socializing with. So you cannot just isolate your kid and say, I'm going to do everything possible to make sure that my son or my daughter has everything and not worry about the others. The others are marginalized groups, right? So we have to change the general public's idea of their frame to look at the marginalized groups, because that's the only way you can get the resources to address anything. Now, on the other hand, I was one of the first scholars in the field when the Syrian refugees came to Turkey in early 2012, 2013. So we collected data, and that was the report you were referring earlier with UNICEF and Save the Children. We showed that, all the vulnerabilities that they are experiencing, the needs, I mean, more than 50% had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. 1 out of 2 kids have depression, and I think about 70% of them have lost somebody in their family. All these numbers I just shared with you are higher than any other conflict in the world. People don't realize what the war zone in Syria is unlike any other war zone in the world, and you see the effects in children. Now, if they came to Turkey more than in other places, and right now the numbers are around 4 million, or close to 4 million from Syria itself. So they speak a language other than Turkish. Turkish government has limited resources. We cannot provide a psychiatrist or a psychologist or social worker to each child. And no other country in the world is really coming to the rescue of Turkish government in terms of financial resources, the way that Turkish government puts the resources up. Now, how are we going to solve this puzzle, right? You have a huge need, a resource-limited country, and then all these people going through their most critical developmental phase. So when I was struggling this as a scholar here in New York, I have developed a new intervention. It's called Project Hope. Project Hope uses the current technologies. So it's basically video games rather. I have 2 kids. I noticed that they always play video games. I never played. It wasn't around when I was growing up. In a remote village in Turkey, we didn't have the electricity to forget the video games. So bottom line, in Urfa, Turkey, you know where Urfa is, which is just around the border from Syria.
Yeah.
We have implemented this. It was an experimental control study, and we show that with only 2 hours of video game, and with this video games, they learn coding, they learn to be more optimistic about their future, have more control over their lives, among other skills. English and Turkish and some basic math. With only 2 hours of video games for 4 weeks, we have significant improvements in all of the indicators we measure. It's a pre and post test comparative design. We published this So it's my hope that projects like this don't only stay in the shelves of scholarly publications and have more usage in the real life. I think we need this sort of innovation. I'm not saying everyone should be doing what I exactly did, but I'm saying that we need innovation using the technologies that are available to address these problems.
Well, actually, I just want to share with you the project that is run by the TRT World Citizen, actually. TRT World Citizen has also initiated a program in the camps, especially where Syrian refugees were living. The kids were educated in terms of how to shoot a film, how to edit it, how to make a news. So at the very young age, they felt that, they are somebody. So it was a training run by TRT World journalists. I think it was a similar experience to empower these young people. Now we are coming to the end of our discussion, almost 40 minutes. My last question is about the role that the parents should play under COVID circumstances, because teachers were supposed to take the full responsibility in the school before, but now kids will spend at least some part of the schooling at home. And what should we do as parents? How we can support the role of teachers? We have got, I think, more responsibilities compared to previous years.
Well, first, appreciate teachers more. It's not easy to motivate children. It's not easy to control, their screen time, right? They always want to be on the screen. At least that's the case in our house. So, it is a frustrating business to be a parent for kids who are learning at home. And I think the first thing is to deal with that frustration. If there is parental stress, that's going to first affect you as a parent, then it's going to affect your child. I think we have to relax our rules. I don't know if you're familiar with some of my publications in Turkish. I have 2 parenting books that deals with exactly this, and we also published, and looking to see if it's somewhere around. We, as part of National Academies of Science, we published a report called Parenting Matters. Anyone can download it, it's free. Parenting Matters is the title. So one of the recommendations we have for parents is building routines. When you talk about parenting, it's really routines that makes parenting work. So within COVID-19, we have to accept the fact that there are new routines. We cannot just do the same things that we were doing before COVID-19. Of course, they're going to spend more time on screen. Of course, they are going to be, they are socially isolated, so they're going to have more emotional needs. All of this puts heavy burden on parents who are also working full-time. So that's why there's research now suggesting that, child abuse rates are going up. Emotional problems, stress-related problems, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation going up. So if, when we say, oh, they shouldn't go to school, distance learning is great, then you have to look at all this toll that's taken on the parents. So it's not easy, is the first thing I say, and it's good old adage, right? Good enough parenting. Don't strive to be a perfect, excellent parent. Good enough parenting given the circumstances.
Professor Şirin, thank you very much for this enlightening talk, and also the recommendations to parents. At the last moment, I think we all need good guides in our, effort to educate our children under the COVID circumstances. Thank you very much for joining at the TRT World Forum Digital Debates. Now we have come to the end of our session. We hope to see you soon. Thank you and goodbye.